creativity is far, far, far beyond what our capacity now demonstrates. And I'm one who is hyper creative. They apparently came up with a hyper something for everything. I'm hyperactive, no doubt about that. I do have an attention deficit issue because I'm like a squirrel. And next thing you know, I burn my eggs. This week I managed to burn 3 meals out of 6 I've tried to cook. I have to sit in front of it. If I walk away and leave the fire on, I get distracted. But you know what? It's because I have so many things going on. And that's not a bad thing. I'm typing at 150 words a minute. I'm in a flow at times of more than that. And I'm drawing pictures and cartoons that have meaning. But people will probably never see them. Most people don't see what you do in your lifetime. Now, some of the drawings I've done in the past, there's meaning to them. I'm supposing you can actually see this because, of course, like most things, this is being done and produced by me and poorly edited. But I wanted to give you an idea. Also, the drawings. When I was young, I didn't believe I could draw. When I was first starting out writing the book of Wibblery and Wub, I was in college, and Rubbles, my avatar, my teacher, he actually was instrumental in getting me to understand that we have to have the worms. We have to have the bees. I was brought up by a family that killed things. Naturally, they killed love, they killed imagination. There wasn't allowed to whistle in the house. If I whistled in the house, that just meant I should be in a barn. Now, this actually depicts in my imagination, if you look, you'll see Dragon's Lair. And Dragon's Lair is a rock that's underneath the water called Dragon's Lair Pond. Next to it's an island. And you can see in the future there's going to be tiny houses around it as I've created all this in my 60s. Actually, I was about 66 when I did this. And we had a great cave, you'll see on my writings. I published about 10 million words on my Substack site. And I'm about to try to figure out and pull it off and edit it all. I've never had an editor. Hey, know any good editors? I need one. And so anyway, this is just a drawing that shows how this is all going to fit out with little houses, tiny houses. And I'm notable for being able to do this. I'm not just making up when you do tiny houses. This is the islands with a bridge. And this is a whole area you'll see in the Song of Salvage. Please go on YouTube. And one of the versions is the kayak bayous. And you'll see how I imagine things. Now, this is the entrance to Salvage, Texas. I had the street name Salvage Way. It was confusing. They kept changing my address every time somebody started to know where I was at. 20501 East IH10. I've still got cards, business cards, with that address on. They changed it. 1212 East IH10. Nobody could find that. Oh, goodness. So finally, let's name it. I got the state to let me name the street Salvage Way. So we have 2 addresses on Salvage Way. 111 Salvage Way. And 333 Salvage Way, which is the dead end of Salvage Way, which adds up to 9. Or 33 1/3 degree, or whatever you want to make it positively. There was a reason. Premonition is a wonderful thing. You actually draw in advance what's going to happen. Sadly, this is probably one of the most disturbing visions I ever had in my life. And I want you to know I had this back in the day. These are incidentally leaded crystal hand cut by men in 1835. Supposedly these men didn't have a lot of technology. They were just dumb old men in 1835. I don't believe that. We had all sorts of additional forms of energy. Now, the reason I'm going to put this up here is because I want you to study this picture if you can. It's called Funorama or Funorama. And, you know, I put this on because I'll probably try to use this as a guide to edit this, because everybody says I'm, a little high spectrum and tend to get distracted. I'm doing my very best to talk slowly because I tend to also use my Michigander accent, which is, if you don't know, 300 words a minute. Now, when I lived in Michigan, in a basement, my dad had paneled the basement on the end of Moody Street, a dead-end street. This is Darby Letic talking to you about his life. Was it true? Well, let's just say for the moment, I, Brad Cattell, am writing the story about Darby Letic and his life. Now, my dog is getting excited. I'm going to let him go out in the back. I want you to study that for a second, and I will return. Go out there. Go scare him off. Bark. I created an environment out of what was an industrial landfill. I have 4 miles of shoreline. And I was wondering what the predator was going to be to take care of the smaller animals. And so you end up with the foxes, and you end up with coyotes, and you can't kill things off because this is all part of the nature. Beavers, otters, all these things moved in once they had water and ponds. There was nothing here before that. It was basically like a funeral home because somebody used it as an industrial landfill when they had a foundry, and they made stainless steel, which meant you added copper and cobalt and all sorts of things, molybdenum, but you also threw away all your waste in your molds with the sand that absorbed all the contaminants that you poured into molds. The metal, then pure, would be sent away to the machine shops. But what was left over was piled into gullies and valleys and turned into really a problem. So I decided to remediate that. In the process of trying to pay off the property, the bank decided to go predator on me. And I ended up fighting them for many years because they wouldn't listen to me. I said, let me just finish paying you. But the property appeared to be worth a lot more back then, and now it is worth a lot more again. But it took me a decade of remediation and digging and closing things off and making it possible for life to thrive again where there was nothing before. The beavers moved up, the otters moved in, the turtles, the fish, the birds come from all over the world to eat because there's so few bugs left in the outer world. The lights are killing them. The radiation's killing them. The beehives are diving. It's horrible from my view. My view, I've spent the last, I bought this in 2007, nearly 20 years. In the beginning, 5 years before that, I would tell my ex-wife, I need to buy that one day. It had been for sale forever. I didn't know why. I just knew nobody bought it and I was going to buy it one day. And she said, why? We don't need that. We got all we need. I was in my 50s. I'd already retired once. I was trying to raise my son. I retired from real estate the first time. Mind you, I came to Texas in a school bus with $640 to my name. $640 in 1984 was a lot more than $640 now. But it wasn't much. And I had no license plates valid. I had no insurance. I had no inspections on my school bus that I left Florida with several years earlier. After graduating from college and going off to write the great American novel, not understanding what life was about yet, just imagining I could do that. So what happened over time, I wanted to be a writer. I knew I was going to be censored if I wrote in. I found out what the publishers did. They put you on the shelf and you never get to see the day. You'd never be marketed. They would steal your information just like they're doing now. I've read the new rules. They're going to take away the artist's right to protect these kinds of things. That's not right. What kind of things? My drawings. Look at that drawing. It's not AI. It's real. Come. Keep it. You go lay down. Lay down. So, what makes it different? AI can't duplicate this. Not necessarily just the fact that it exists, but I saw this in 1972, maybe 71, before Omega Man. Before the movies and things that are supposed to happen to go ahead and help you understand what's really going on, to make you aware. The full disclosure of what can happen in the future. The future, of course, has already happened. We're just in the process of helping form it. That's what we came for. That's why we reincarnate, and why we create. Reincarnate is also a matter of creating, being created in body, I, identity, incarnate, carnate, in flesh. So reincarnate means simply coming back into flesh again and operating on the book of Wibblery. Well, the key. These are keys. These unlock at the right time in awareness what is happening. The funerama. When you understand, my son passed away. He gave us a song. He put music to my words because I had never managed to play music other than whistle. Thank you, my son, dear Adam. Brad Gittell. He put to music my song of salvage, a poem I wrote. And for a child who was autistic, and since if he was not necessarily focused, he didn't make all A's like I did effortlessly. He didn't do so many things that I did effortlessly. And I thought maybe, it's because he was, first 3 months of pregnancy, he was raised on milkshakes. That's all she would drink. And then the second 3 months after the doctor said you can't do that, she went to hot and sour soup exclusively from the restaurant across the highway. And then finally in the last 3 months, he came out and turned out to be a wonderful 6'4" tall boy, but he was dyslexic and had a lot of issues trying to learn. He was hyperactive, but we didn't move like I did when I was a kid. I changed schools 13 times before I graduated high school. I didn't fit in well. I was always strange. I grew up created in the Americas, born in Germany, came back to America, went back to Germany with a dad who was pretty upset about Vietnam, and been over to my beatings, but I also went from Germany to the United States, and as a child broke my back and went to South America and lived in La Paz, Bolivia, and learned to get disciplined not to cry for no reason, which I thought was a good thing. But unfortunately I had pain in the chest because I broke my back when I crashed a Studebaker. It didn't dent very much for the amount of damage it did to the trailer I hit, the mobile home RV, because my mother left me in the front seat, unbuckled, in my little Sunday suit at the driver's seat, and I pulled it into gear, and she didn't have the emergency brake set well enough. And while she sat there with my brother and my sister in her belly, I can distinctly remember waving as we went forward, and I had the steering wheel. I had no contact with the brake or anything, but it wasn't a long hill. I hit it. Nobody thought anything of it, except I'd broken my back. Mom didn't mention to Dad, because Dad's kind of a hard guy to deal with when he was drunk and angry. And so it kind of got missed, and we went on. And over time, I got a number of spankings, and my dad's version was, get your belt, grab your ankles, bend over, take your licking, and don't cry. You're learning not to cry over nothing. You want something to cry about? This is something to cry about. That's abuse in this day and age. I understand that. But some of us were brought up that way, especially children of the army. The army that was sent away, and as long as you drank alcohol, like you were allowed to do in the officer club and the NCO club, separately. Keep in mind, in military society, the non-commissioned officers, the troops that go out there and get slaughtered or killed or sent out to go ahead and do the stupid things that get them captured, and the officers in the low ranks. The officers don't go and party with the sergeants in the lower ranks. None of the officers do. And there's a reason for that. Because familiarity breeds contempt. And you're allowed to go ahead and drink, get drunk, and forget what you did. But you can't do it with the officers, otherwise you'll be fighting each other. So you go get drunk at the officers' club and argue over there. You get drunk over there, but you don't get together and get drunk. That's one of the basic rules of the military. You didn't know that? That's how you get rid of the pain, the memories. But you can't smoke pot. If you do, the brainwashing wears off, and you don't want to kill innocents. That's the way it works. Another story, another time. So, when you grew up in that kind of a family, and you're crippled, and you're coming into towns full of rednecks. And they like to beat up on people that are four-eyed, blind. I was blind by 7 years old. I was legally blind without my glasses, with a walking stick, by 10 years old, 12 years old. Looked like I could wear glasses. They were big and thick, and they were Army-issued black Billy Holly glasses. Four-eyed crowd. And I had a number of different names they called me. In the days of little kittles and skedaddle kittles. If you haven't ever seen a skedaddle kittle or a little kittle, they're little tiny dolls about this big with hair as long as their whole body. And they were dancing around and stuff like that. And I get off the school bus and everybody go ahead and sing the little skedaddle call and the song and laugh and make fun of me. And so I grew up a depressed child in Michigan and other places. And yeah, at the same time, smart. Unfortunately, too smart. And what is too smart? Whew. Suppose, let's discuss the picture for a moment. What do you see? What did I once see? Wibblery. When Darby goes away and keeps leaving, he can't believe it. He goes back and asks Rubbles after that first time. The prelude assumes that Darby paid attention and came back and never questioned. Well, don't believe it. Darby questioned every day. Why me, God? Why'd you pick broken old me? And when he come home from school, having to run through the woods so the kids would knock him on the ground and piss on him like they did his friends that couldn't run as fast, despite broken back. Darby knew his way through the woods across the creeks. His friends did not. His friends fell down. His friends were pissed on and never, ever came out the back door of the school with him again. The stories Darby can tell, and does, in the book of Wibblery and Wub. It's on Substack. You can't hardly find it like every place else. These stories are written, and they're well hidden. But once upon a time, before that happened, this is a funeral home. And in the front you see a casket. It's a glass front, so you can go and open display. Everybody comes and watches. And when I was young and saw this scene at 15, and came into view and saw, wow, look at this. It's a funeral. It's a memorial. Except I couldn't see my son in the casket after I picked him up at the mortuary in Notre Dame Cathedral before it burned, the old version. Behind it was a mortuary. Above it was a cemetery, hundreds of years old. A place where if you didn't pay the dues, they'd dig up your monuments and replace you. I know, I bought some of the monuments years ago when I had an antique store. Where did these come from? Oh, they couldn't pay the dues. Yeah. Those are used. That's the story of most of the world. When you go in East Paris, there's entire caverns filled with bones, skulls. In a day when there was not enough space to bury all the bodies from the wars. There are so many children killed in battle, sent there because all the adults were gone, sold off by parents who could not afford to have children. That's how soldiers begun. These are the days of old. Seldom does anybody know how that goes. But if your parents were killed, or your parents are starving, and you got 6 kids, and your 2 oldest boys are taken away for war, 12 years old, 14 years old. That was reality in the days of King James. Using all these boys and troops to go ahead and, after writing the book of demonology, how to burn witches and long hairs and people that didn't necessarily agree, because all the history is in your chemistry. I shaved my beard so I could be not seen as crazy for a while. But honestly, you have all recorded in your hair I've not cut it since my son passed away. Actually, for several years before. So, in theory, you'll be able to put this on a film and read it one day. Your history. That's why some of the Hindu monks shave every day. So they shave away their past so they can be reborn every day. Well, I'm 70. I shaved off all my hair when I took my son away from the city so I could raise him and be with him for a little while in a country where, yes, in Texas, where the fact that I had long hair, he got intimidated or picked on. So I had to conform, I thought. This is a bad thing to do. Carl Jung recommends you don't. I recommend you don't. After 46 moves in my life of being around a whole lot of people, and everybody's seeing me every time I move in different ways, this depicts part of what I knew way a long time ago would happen. Part of what I went back and found out on the other side of the veil, where time truly isn't the same. This is simply a holographic projection. If you see it correctly, it can be filled with other images and then come back. As Tesla hallucinated while he was watching and talking to people, tongues falling down behind them, and all those various things can happen between the perception and the deception, the distraction. But on the other hand, imagination, dreams, visions, channeling, writing, drawing. As this casket went around and the curtains closed, I went up above and suddenly I was seeing it happen. And it went over here and there was a couple hoses hooked up, lines, and it shot gas into there. And it was almost like a neon glare, just a neon energized gas. And then it moved along to the next spot and zapped it. And it turned liquefied everything inside of the clear casket. Glass, lucite. I had no idea. I knew I could see everything inside of it. And as it moved to the next slot, it sucked it all out and flushed it. And then it went around to the next spot and it put in another corpse, another human body. Dressed up, laying there, peaceful. And then it moved around to the next spot, and as people were moving into the room, it was moved out in the front. Just like the little place I went to see my son, just before he's cremated. They wanted to sell me a wonderful casket. I said, why? He's going to be cremated. Why would I buy a wonderful casket? And why did I have him cremated? Because bringing him back to America was very difficult, very expensive. I couldn't look at my son's face after being underwater for 3 weeks in the Seine River. That's when they discovered him. Who they are, that's another discussion, another story. Goes back all the way. Your father's sins should be paid for by your sons. Never forget that in war, please. Vengeance is done by the sons of the fathers lost, and they do it by taking the sons of their enemies and killing them so they can't ever do it again. And the cycle goes on. War goes on. War is hell on the families at home. This cycle, if you look at it now in today's, this was, again, I saw this in 1969, 70. Okay. This, all these lines, the extraction of the proteins, the extraction of the fats, the extraction of the muscles and all of the hemoglobin, everything that is in the side of this gelatinous shell, the skin, and the fascia, that beautiful silver lining between that people fill up with fat that goes really thick. You say, I don't have much left. That's because right now I'm in a recycle. Yes. We go into our cocoon internally. What does it mean to be reborn and still stay in the same body? To take on a new perspective, the new chakra. You're moving and elevating and seeing it now, 7 years, but from a different view. Perspective. What is the perspective you're viewing this cycle of your life from? In the beginning, at the bare bottom, I'm touching everything in my mouth. Oh my God, as a child, you touch everything, you want to taste it, you want to feel it, you want to throw it in the air, see if it breaks, you want to throw it on the table. That's what you do. And then you develop an appetite for one thing or the other. Oh, that felt good, that felt bad. Ugh, I'm going to eat that again. That's the next step. 7 years of viewing the world from whether it tastes good or not. But the first 7 years, at the root chakra, that's your emotions. That's how you want to deal with people for the rest of your life. That's how were you hurt, how were you traumatized in those first 7 years while you were in the womb, when you came out of the womb. I hardly ever understood why people don't understand the first 7 years is the most important, because I didn't, but guess what? That's what we planned. That was our shit show. We had to go through what nobody else could endure, because those of us who make it, this is the Beatles, this is the ones who went through the hardest times to become the greatest. John Lennon, you want to talk Hendrix, you want to talk any one of the wonderful people in the past that have suddenly disappeared or died. There's reasons, whether they want to conform to changing from 432 to 440. There are so many reasons people disappeared, from Malcolm X to Luther King to Dr. Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and others who resisted, especially once LSD came along and the realization in the CIA that there was actually another realm. This was only part of it. We would be extracting human essence, not just the fluids, not just the fats, but literally the essence of what a human can be. Transhumanism. Now, I do want you to note, by the way, for those of you who don't note, right outside the venue, you can pick up some snacks. Want some protein snacks? Organic, all natural, guaranteed to be almost as human as you could ever want it to be. Now, do you want to buy the essence of somebody else? Because guess what? You could probably get out here if you wanted to order it. There's a lot of things humans take under the auspices of staying healthy, but at the expense of somebody else. Children, body parts. So, along the way, one day, there came a fantasy hero. Not just any fantasy hero, but Darby Ledick in his visions, in his drawings, in a way to spread wibblery. It's supposed to be hard to say. Imagine me being serious up on stage and going, "Yep, we're going after those wibblery people. We're going to attack them wubbers because they're trying to create a wub, a world union of beings that represents not just humans, but worms and bees and whales, gorillas. They are crazy. I mean, they think dolphins can actually talk. They're going to go after the crazy people who wear charms or do what they consider to be magical or mystical or phenomenal. They must be witches or warlocks. Burn them at the stakes," said King James as he went to those events at 10 years old for the years of the demonology for 2 more years until they started to integrate the new King James version of the Bible. And I was down there in the Gutenberg press at 12 years old in the castle. And you look at the Gutenberg press, a very simple process. You simply put all your type letters, you put them on there, and you ink it up, and you have paper come down, and you roll it down, you press it, and you roll it back up, and you pull the paper out, and you put more paper in, and you ink it, and you do it again and again. And that was the modern presses of the times of King James. The first modern presses, the first internet of words. Now, first of all, if you could read, you're dangerous. If you could write, you were more dangerous in those days, because you couldn't do either without the approval of King James, or you lost your head or you lost your hands, as warnings. Because if you killed, nobody ever could see what happens if you didn't obey censorship. I was an English American Lit major. What I learned was that there is not a true story out there in his story, because it was his story, King James' story, that had people put into insane asylums and had people killed and their children taken away and shipped off, and indentured servants. And if they were lucky enough to be an indentured servant and sent over here to America from Ireland or Scotland or any place that you took prisoners, you didn't want them around. If they weren't worth killing, they were worth using for slaves, indentured servants. Texas, incidentally, had a wonderful lumber industry, but unfortunately, they were paid with tokens, sent as indentured servants. That's why Germany had so many people in Texas that when it became a republic, it was one vote away from being German as the official language for the state of Texas, which would have been now the 8th biggest industrial and economic complex in the world. Basically, mostly German when it was formed. Now, there's good things and bad things about the Germans. I happen to like Germans because I'm a German, and I believe there's a very logical mind that goes with it, but they also get extreme sometimes. And that's why we have a conservative element to us. Admittedly, I moved here. I'm not from Texas. I was not born in Texas. I was born in Germany. I ended up here. I came through here to Killeen, Texas, coming back from South America. I did live in Killeen, Texas, actually. First time I got arrested, I didn't get arrested, I got picked up by the police. I was 6 years old, just turning 7, and we lived on the army base outside of Killeen, and my mom, my dad, my brother and sister younger than me, and I had gone up, and there was on the way to the elementary school, this is a little old gravel road, for a little subdivision they put in, and back then Johnsons were putting in the subdivisions because he'd moved the troops in, and Lady Bird owned the subdivision companies and the building companies, and they would build houses and then move more troops in and have much more demand for houses and drive up the value of houses. And this is how Johnson worked after Kennedy was killed, to go ahead and become rich, and also owned the Clear Channel radio stations, which was 1,500 radio stations strong, kind of like the Hearst Empire, except in radios. Why? Because guess what? You could control a lot of people's minds, propaganda, through the radio when the TV was still young. And Superman and other things like that, Popeye and cartoons like Roadrunner were allowed. Oh my goodness, violent now. The question is always, oh wait a second, what happened to that poor young lady being thrown from one shoulder to the other, from Popeye to Brutus? Why, what? Anyway, victimizing animals and making fun of the weak, that's been done forever. I was in the age when, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a hippie. I worked from the time I was 12 years old. I had the luxury of being a hippie. I missed Woodstock because I had to work, to be able to buy my own jeans, to be able to have anything other than black glasses. I wanted to have some beautiful, some wireframe glasses. And I was only allowed to have something so dark I could not wear them inside. Wireframes that were so heavy, it cut the insides of my nose just so I could see, but I wanted it to be cool. You'll see those glasses in the young Darby in his very youth. But again, the process of going from being beaten up and crippled and told you can't do things, and told, I was editor of the newspaper in 6th grade, and all of a sudden back to Germany, and everything you know is ripped out of your hands. All your learning to do newspaper. Back then we did this on the mimeograph machine with that really stinky ammonia stuff. And we'd actually do the newspaper and write it all out. I was doing this in 5th grade and 6th grade. And somewhere along the line, they did an IQ test in those days, like John F. Kennedy was doing physical tests and everything. Also came the IQ test in school. Would you believe that? Where would they go today? So it turned out they ran that, and I'm about to run out of time, so I'm going to just cap this one off with this. I was told, my mother had been told at school, but they also told everybody on the PA system that they did the IQ test. I was in 5th grade. Out of the whole high school and junior high, there was only one genius. And it turned out to be me. The blind geek in the front row with glasses, still blind. And considered a kraut and picked on because I was a pacifist by then and couldn't fight back. And so because of that, I had a lot of extra grief And then we pulled our roots and went back to Germany again. And I was in Germany for another year before I came back, but honestly, 2 years. 6th grade and 7th grade I spent over in Germany. Baumholder, Germany. Baumholder and Freiburg. The joke in Baumholder was the only thing that kept England from falling into the ocean was that Baumholder sucked so bad it kept the coastline from falling off. That's how I spent my first couple years as a teenager. And then I came back to Michigan. My dad went back to Vietnam. And everybody hated the soldiers in Vietnam, who were by then considered baby killers and not very popular. The war was not popular. And I went back to living at the end of Moody Street, actually the same old house, in the basement where my dad built my room when he went off to war. And at the dead end on Moody Street, that's where Darby had his first dreams. In the book of Wibblery and what began. And he said, why, God? Why did you put me here? I can't be that hero, God. Why would you send a crippled kid? I had no optimism. I tried to commit suicide. I felt I was alone. Nobody but me. Why, God? I thought it was the vessel. I thought it was supposed to be the ego, the warrior. I didn't have that. I in those days, if I went like this, there was nothing there. Mind you, I went off from Darby, left home to go live with his dad as the alternative to suicide at 115 pounds, coming on 15 years old, stressed out, couldn't pick anything up, back virtually useless. It would pinch his neck, pinch his chest, he couldn't breathe, pinch his lower back. The chiropractor, when I first did the x-rays, it was like this. The Army didn't believe in x-rays. So from 7.5, when they discovered the broken back, Darby actually had no choice but to simply endure and take his spankings for not making sure he became a pacifist. If you got to fight, go pick out your belt, bend over, grab your ankles, bare butt, don't cry. You won't get any more fights. Why? Because if you do, you could be paralyzed the rest of your life. And my dad did not want to have a paralyzed boy. He wanted me to be healthy. But well, anyway, I went to a chiropractor finally. He straightened me out some. Every time I'd walk home, I could afford to go 2 times a week. We had to pay for it. Army wouldn't cover it. U.S. Army didn't believe in chiropractors. They were quacks. And so I went down there. The story of the back. And I would go from the chiropractor's house or office less than a quarter mile away, walk home afterwards because my mom worked or wasn't available to give me a ride, and walk on the sidewalk. And if the sidewalk was bumpy and I'd hit wrong, I could actually throw my back out. And it'd be 2 or 3 days before I could breathe again or walk. In those days, if I reached down to get my books from underneath my desk, I could get pinched and get stuck and not be able to breathe until I started to collapse and catch myself with my one arm on the desk and use my arm and grab my books to get up, because I couldn't expose that I was hurting that bad or that weak in school, because it was bad enough with the bullies waiting outside my last class in literature. Thank goodness Mrs. Nelson chased them off. One of my heroes as a child. Literature, English literature class. Mrs. Nelson, the teachers you have when you're young, they can make an impression on you for your entire life. Good teachers are so hard to find. I was lucky. Didn't know it. I had some wonderful teachers. And the stories, Darby. And I'm speaking, of course, channeling Darby. And the experiences from having Mrs. Nelson be the one to tell me my mother had been beaten up in the laundromat by Stan Otis Burley, her boyfriend. About 6'4", bar bouncer, big guy. I actually worked for him a couple times. Nicest guy in the world. When he was sober, he was a Christian, God-fearing man, and when he was drunk, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in persona. Biggest, hardest, meanest bouncer in 4 counties around. They wanted somebody to take care of the crowd. They brought him in. He went like this, picked the guy up, carried him out, threw him out in the parking lot. And if he dared swing a punch at Stan, he had iron jaw. Teeth that had been taken out, dentures. Now, iron skull. Looked like a lurch looking down at you. And he had balls, I think, of steel. So the man was just pretty much waist down, skinny toothpicks from waist up. He did concrete and blocks. I worked for him. The blocks, concrete blocks, 8 by 16s, and he would take them in one hand. One hand. And the other hand, he'd butter on the mortar. I was 115 pounds. That block was 48 pounds sometimes. I was like, I learned. I stacked all the blocks for him one at a time. And I took a quarter barrel of mortar in the wheelbarrow. I couldn't do more than a quarter wheelbarrow because I couldn't keep my balance, couldn't hold it. I was not strong. And trying to roll across boards and stuff like that. I got 75 cents an hour. I was 14, 14. I started work early, but it made me stronger. Eventually, I worked on my back until I was 55 years old. Then I got over knowing and believing that it had to be that way forever and fixed it in part of the youthing. And I try to teach that to people with a good chiropractor and good helpers, assistants, people believe in you and you believing in yourself. This is something I never had as a kid. This was unbelievable. Not even imaginable. As a body, as a physical body, as a manifestation. Unimaginable. Nobody in my generation ever thought you could look like this at 70 years old. But I'm here to tell you can. And I'm here to tell you that I'm the first one I would have told you it wasn't possible until I saw a man who was 118 years old, who is a famous man you can find on the internet. And you can watch him at the Qigong convention in 2012. You can watch him pass away, having done a sword dance in the year of his passing to the next that is impeccable. I couldn't do it. And he was 118 years old. So it gave me a whole new lease on life. And I realized we can become younger. Now, Cliff High is figuring this out. We've seen this done by others. We're not the only ones. I watched Greg Braden. He's a little ahead of me. He's 75 years old. He's on the 200-year plan. Well, you know what? If you stay on the planet, if you leave the planet, if you come back again, 200 years is just a tiny space. We are not alone. There are others coming. There are others already here. Under the oceans we've known about for years. There's entire colonies under the oceans that are over a mile wide. And they're moving across the ocean, harvesting minerals and actually able to completely operate a city from underground. All these things I've drawn over the last few years. Mind you, again, I was not an artist by nature. I never took an art class, actually. Oh, wait, no, I took one class for 4 weeks when I was back in Michigan school, in between going from Michigan for freshman, Oklahoma, Lawton, Oklahoma for sophomore, and then Michigan for my junior, and then Alabama, Enterprise, Alabama for my senior year. And I graduated cum laude and had 6 extra credits. I didn't want to even take the class. I had to take classes. And I got to give the welcome everybody, and then they didn't give any counseling for college or anything like that. And I'd done my deed. I promised my dad I'd get my high school degree, diploma, because he didn't get his, because right before then he had mixed up in a chemical class nitroglycerin. And that's just, potassium permanganate and glycerin together makes nitroglycerin. If you shake it up, you can blow it up in your face if you don't watch out. And he did. It went through his hands, and he ended up in the hospital and didn't make graduation and lost the chance to get his diploma, and he went to the Army, always regretting that. Got it through GED, worked his way up from the bottom of the Army, all the way up to warrant officer, proud that he went in there and managed to do all that. But it kept him from going to Korea and being able to kill people right off the bat. So instead he went down to South America, and in his early 20s was killing people to help control Bolivia, La Paz, Bolivia, when the Americans controlled it and changed the president out 34 times in 52 years. Amazing how they were able to do that from just living on the sidewall of the presidential mansion. Amazing. That's what we did when I was a child. That gets you in trouble when you talk about it, even though it's not secret anymore. It's 70 years later. But still, I think that stuff still may go on, I hear. Who knows? So this represents these chakras. These are the different points at which you, as you go through your life, how you express yourself from your heart, where I have still feeling the last of a hole from another lifetime where that knife went through there. We come back and we get to go ahead and do it differently and maybe do it right. It's amazing. 49 years old, your eyes start opening, you wire the front lobes of your brain. If you're not doing alcohol all the time, you can actually develop the mature neurons that operate at 10 to 100 times the speed of the juvenile neurons as they feel into a new bus, a new architecture that operates with 11 outputs from a synapse instead of 3. No longer are you black, white, and gray of the legal world and the entanglements of reality, but now you have 11 outputs and you can deal with the other elements of the reality. So there's a lot of ways you can look at this. How much energy does it take to form reality tomorrow? Do dreams have any symbolism? Well, I say they do, because your Wubtron, that essence of you that then incarnates, can become something. What can it become? That's a tough one. It's kind of like, what's a moon? What does a moon do? Does it spawn life? Does it kind of monitor life when it park it on a planet, such as our moon was done years ago? If you look back far enough, there was no moon, then there was a moon. That's another whole subject for a lot of people. They don't understand that yet. That hollowness of the moon, that certain element. Why is it only pocketed and occupied on the backside and not so easy? Oh, it wasn't used to be so easy to see from the front side. Well, if you watch the story and understand what really happens, the moon's a very interesting place. You can spawn a moon, and if you do spawn a moon and move it to a place and park it next to a planet and help them develop, help alter the genealogy, alter the genes, alter the RNA, the DNA, but most importantly the DHA, which gives us the human power to transform energy, sun, into energy life. So eyes convert sun into energy, and also the DHA in our eyes, underneath our DNA, is DHA. And the DHA allows us to then emit information, photons, out of our eye. Cool shit, huh? But then that's another story, another chapter. Now, if I were just drawing things, and I would you believe these just kind of came along? And if you're taking and trying to go ahead and make a point in society, and you draw things like this, you're getting all sorts of trouble if they don't like what you draw. Did you know that? They can make sure that nobody ever sees anything you ever draw. Now, I have a poem out there I highly recommend everybody look at, just because it's kind of a fun poem. It's on YouTube still. It's called The Chasm at the Fringe. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when you reach the point in your life when you have to leap across a gigantic chasm. And it's the one between where you've been and where you want to go. And if you go up to the edge of it and you look down, you'll see a lot of corpses, a lot of bones, a lot of dreams that fell to waste. They lost hope. They didn't make the leap. They took too much with them. They tried to make the leap and they weren't prepared. Their vessel was not ready. You can't take your past with you. You can't take your treasures with you. You make that leap across that chasm with faith. Listen to the YouTube version of The Chasm at the Fringe. And if you're going through that experience, you're going to understand that there's lots of hazards. Okay? Now, what's a hazard? Well, what if you're paying attention to everybody on the side? You're running as fast as you can and you're getting ready. What if in your dreams, you're just in that dream stage? You know you have to go. Almost like as Darby was, intentionally leaving his body. Intentionally going off and asking the question, why am I here? I want to be a part of something. I want to contribute. I don't want to suffer and be beaten and literally have people come to your door and ask you to come out of the front yard so they can beat on you. And Darby had that happen. Luckily, Darby was still agile enough that he could pin somebody down and bleed on their face without hitting them. You could be a pacifist. That's a pacifist. Someone wants to beat you up and you knock them down and you pin them and you bleed on them because your nose bleeds real easy. And you bleed into their eyes and you bleed into their face and they jump up and run in horror and never come back again. You never had to hit them. Isn't that being a pacifist? If he caused a bloody nose, are you responsible for him getting blood on him? I was in my 50s before I understood that Jesus said that if the centaur, the Roman soldier, slaps you, turn the other cheek. Well, of course he's going to slap you with his ass-wiping hand, left hand, and by slapping you, you're a slave. You're allowed to do that. Caesar says so. You can slap any slave, any peasant with your left hand, your shit hand. But if you dare slap him with your right hand, that's a challenge to a duel. Well, that's a whole different product. That means when you did that to me, well, thank you, I choose to pick the staff. Why? Well, I have to be very good with staff. You're not. Let's have a duel. You're allowed to do that. If you turn the other cheek and he slaps it. That's what Jesus said to do. Jesus was not a pacifist. No, he was actually an activist. There's a difference between a pacifist who's also an activist. He tells you how not to get hurt, how to defend your wife, how to defend your child, how to defend what you believe in. What does that mean? Well, he also said, if the centurion, the Roman soldier, tells you carry his pack for a mile, carry it for 2. Why did he tell you that? Because Caesar himself said that villagers are proud to help the Romans. They will carry their pack for a mile, no problem. But when you start making them carry it for 2 and you exhaust them, you make them tired, then they start hating Caesar. We don't want them to hate Caesar. No soldier, by decree of Caesar, will ever make a villager carry his pack for more than a mile. Of course, there was a customary mile in those days, number of steps determined by these things. Guess what? If you carried it for 2 miles and you put it down, you went, hey, Sergeant, he just made me carry his pack for 2 miles. The sergeant has 2 choices. Is he going to discipline that soldier with Roman discipline? Or is he going to face Caesar disciplining the sergeant for not making his troops keep from abusing the peasants after they had overrun their armies and taken their children to go off and be in the armies of Caesar? No. You don't do that. So, carry the pack for 2 miles. And the other thing people remember is in Leviticus, for those of you who don't, and I don't particularly necessarily think you should quote every chapter, you may not know them, but in Leviticus you may find that Jesus also said, you need a robe, of course. You're living in the desert. The rain, you can't just run around naked. You got a robe. It's waterproof with waxes and it's warm. In the cold, you wrap it around you. But mind you, in Leviticus, Jesus says, if you do not own a sword, sell your robe, buy a sword, be able to defend your people. Why do you say that? Because after Jesus was given an option, hey, go on the cross or we come and slaughter your entire church. You're the head of the Church of Nazarene, and we don't like what you're saying. Well, he said, okay, I'll be there. And guess what? He was there. Now, he was on the cross for about 6.5 hours. He was considered dead. Pontius Pilate didn't believe it. They broke the legs on the other 2 guys. They were up there. They died because they were collapsed and couldn't breathe. And then they ended up taken them down in the festivities for the day, and they had Sabbath. Don't leave them up on the day of Sabbath. They put them back up later, and they put him into the tomb, and he's put in there with oils by the doctor and Mary, a woman of oils, and part of the Essenes. The Essenes, now mind you, the Essenes were part of one of the 5 churches in that day, and Yahweh, Jesus, was the leader of the church. He left that job to his brother, John the Right, I believe it was, and then they went on to later on, half-brother. And this is because they were assassinated as they wiped out the last of the Essenes after the death of Yahweh, the crucifixion of Yahweh. Now, nobody ever said he went to heaven that day. None of the apostles showed up. None of that. Dun, 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 you see the light go up in the air. You didn't see all that day. What you saw was him go into pretty much a coma, a dead state, and he wasn't bleeding or anything, and it looked like he was dead. And surely this is the Son of God, said the guard who stood at the tomb that night. When suddenly Jesus, Yahweh, was not in the tomb the next morning. And admittedly, he was seen later on. Of course, you could live for up to 24 hours on the cross, crucifixion, hung up there, as the ambassadors were, when the lead ambassador came and asked for his 3 assistants to be cut down because they'd been crucified. Caesar had them crucified. He said, okay, cut them down, as the negotiations. And in doing so, what happened was, one of them survived. So we do know that people lived for more than 24 hours on the cross and survived it. Jesus was on there. That's why Pontius Pilate didn't believe it for 6.5 hours. And 8.5 hours, they allowed him to be taken down and put into the tomb, assumed to be dead, of course. And then later on, the stories of him coming back and talking to people and being able to be seen again, much like Elvis, when Elvis went undercover on an FBI program and was able to live for many, many years in Graceland. People don't realize that, don't know about that, but he did. But the point is this: everything is not what you think it is. There's a lot of illusion in the world. The islands of the days of the prisoner, where they go off and they live on an island. Nobody else go to the island. They can't escape from the island either. That was Patrick McGowan. Remember him? The days of the spy and what they did with the spy when he tried to retire. Well, can you say Epstein? Can you say Enron? Can you say how many miraculous deaths can you have right as you go into the jail and never actually serve any time, you die? You trying to tell me? So, what you're looking at right here is a dream portrait. Imagine my house out in the back, Temple Tantra. And imagine, if you can, that there's also a beautiful story that goes with it. That should take care of my kitty cat, who's actually asking for food. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Kitty cats talk in pictures. They also talk in words. Water is wee, and now the other one you heard, that's food. Animals talk in pictures. Cats that live with me. Cats that live up front. Dogs. People. Telepathy works best in pictures. You get a whole lot said in a very short amount of time. Or you can have complex pictures that have a lot to say. Our time is here. The serpent. All of this. Should use purple sand for this one. I don't know how I'm ever going to put this up or post this. It's going to be so damn long. I should check. Is my phone? Is it running? Oh. Yeah, look at that. Supposedly, this is all being recorded. This is the beginning of my next decade of taking all these pictures out. The book of Wibblery and Wub. The children's version. The adult version. There's the whole story of what is wobbling, touching, communicating. How do we communicate, and what are the abuses of that? You can beat the hell out of somebody by touching them, but you can also heal them with a single touch. Why are we here? How do we get here? What is a wubtron? What is that energy inside of us we call spirit or soul? Can you pin it down, consciousness? We're finding out you can't. We're finding out we're in a quantum tunneling information system that's able to produce more energy that it takes in through food. It can actually take in energy from the sun. ultraviolet light. More skin, more exposure, more mitochondria functioning. Oh my goodness, melatonin production. And all these things that the body produces that are miraculous, and you try to build them in a lab and make them. Good luck. It's expensive to buy this shit when you can make it naturally and extract it at the funerama when you die. Especially if you die in terror like a child. And you can extract that adrenaline and all those chemicals at just the right moment and preserve your youth. I'm against that. Natural is the only way to go. Organic is the only way. No, Microsoft owns part of me. Don't want that. Or my child. Or anybody else for that matter who wants to own part of the DNA and then consider that a species as part of their collection. Like plants that are immune to certain poisons that they can then put out. We aren't going to allow that. My cat's going crazy because she knows there's other entities joining us right now. It's kind of funny to watch. But this, again, just a cartoon, guys, about Wibblery and a Wubtron and how we, as a species, are a bunch of us that came here to make this happen. What is this? Well, what is Wibblery? It's a very small set of words. Keywords based on Wib, Wub, energy, soul, in body. Wib, capital W-I-B. I'm a representative for the Intercosmic Wub Society, by the way. I'm a whistleblower. Normally I can do better. I'm a little thirsty. But the point is this. Whistleblowers will be heroes. Not whistleblowers like me, but we've lost a lot of whistleblowers. I'm talking about the ones that have died already for this cause. To tell the truth, to get it out in the open, to see. So everybody needs to see what's going on. How do we do that? How do we do that? So that little set of words can go around the world. It's numerologically amazing when you start running those numbers out and extrapolating them. It's an amazing thing when you start thinking about all the things that we can do with our imagination. Contained in a book. And if that book survives me, that's so dangerous that they have bonfires. They burn people's houses down. They burn down the Library of Constantinople. They burn down the greatest libraries in the world in hopes of destroying what can be hidden in a single book. You flip through some things and there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of goop or cartoons. What's hidden? What do you see? That's the whole mystery. It isn't necessarily what everybody else sees. I actually have a number of books ready to go. 12 million words written in the last few years. Finally got the drawings all done. Not all colored in, but I have a lot of plans. A lot of theses on how to build things, little houses, and drawings. Everything one would need if they want to create a small society of people that want to think free, believe in sovereignty. Now, some people think that's crazy. Some people don't understand that you can take and build something that simple. We have one, if you look online, YouTube, you'll see this being created. It's called the birdhouse, or it's also called Pig Sanctuary. This was generated and created by a man and a young lady. They're now living in Poland, and it was donated to a pig sanctuary for hogs. This incidentally describes Boolean logic, which is a good way to understand if a language or a concept or something somebody's telling you makes sense or not, or if they're just full of shit. Now, in time, we've learned that humans can do all sorts of crazy, wonderful things. But one thing they cannot do necessarily, everybody, is build, but see, draw it out in their mind Take a picture, add on pieces, and then keep going until you create the reality. Okay? Now, some things you'd think would be obvious. This is one. Diagnose the word. Break it down. Community. In theory, it's about communicating. Honestly, truthfully. It's about unity. What are you unifying around? Oh, we're going to burn witches. Okay, I'm not here. Bye. We're going to be just one religion wins and everybody else dies. No, sorry, not for me. Why? Because that's called exclusions. Like, you don't do it my way, you're dead. That don't work for me. Now, part of the reason is too many people die. More wars are fought over religion than anything else. You go, why? Why? Because people believe instead of have faith. And a lot of times they don't have a lot of choices. Now, some of the things people are going to ask, where do words come from? And I'm going to tell you, there's root words, there's base words, there's, we used to call transactional grammar when I went to college. Linguistic programming is another thing they call it now. What's that mean? Words have meaning. And a key word, a root word, can be grown upon. A wib becomes wibbling. Wibbling is what? Transmitting what you believe through mind to mind. Telepathy. Now, in this case, your dreams are what allow you to go ahead and make a big plan in the world for the future, or what you prophesize in your mind you're supposed to do. The parts of it are who you're supposed to meet. All the other people are going to help you. Why? We can't do this alone. I'm not here to do this alone. I'm not here to save the world alone. I'm here to help create a story about a young man who tries to do it. And why? It's fantasy. No one person can ever do it. Don't think you're the one picked. Don't think you're the only one in the room. You're just like one young boy picked to do one job. You may never even see the results of your work. But knowing the internet was coming, having the first cyber cafe to actually have the first conversation from Texas to New York City, the biggest cyber cafe in the United States, to New York City, took the entire internet provider with 2 ISDN lines, slow, and he had to dedicate those lines going into his line, the trunk, into one conversation the size of your phone. And that was without even sinking the lips to the face. For 15 minutes, he had to go back on, so everybody else operating again, because he had to shut everybody else off. All the businesses on that trunk. So this was in a day when memory, for the first cyber cafe, they wanted me to go buy 8 gigabits. After I built the whole thing out and turned an old food stamp laundering operation into the first cyber cafe called the Discovery Incubator in Texas, by painting all the windows shut and without getting a permit, converting a store with 12-year-old inventory into the cyber cafe that later on was shut down just before the dot-com boom started, because the employees stole all the computers because the internet was about to put money on there. They were going to scam them. They were called hackers. But also what I saw, the internet was dangerous. So be careful what you take into your mind. That was the first cyber cafe in Texas. And believe it or not, I lost about $150,000 on it in a very short amount of time. But it was worth it. Why? Because, as you may know, it's a never-ending story, guys. As the saying goes, we're all coming to the planet for the same reason. The little blue ball in the sky. It's a fantasy. A fantasy adventure for spirits from all over the cosmos. A chance to engage once again, to do battle in a holographic world where we can win this time. Why? Because we have the advantage. What's the advantage? Nobody saw this curveball coming. What's the curveball? Wibbling. And what? Nah, that can't be. That's just too unbelievable to happen. Exactly. If I get Cliff High, who knows computers like nobody else in the world, and I've watched him for years, watched him die and come back to life because he found out about youthing, like I did. I've watched Craig Braden, who's managing to stay young at 75 and with his hair still popping up. Well, I don't do that, but I do have my own hair. And I had a nice gray beard, but oh my goodness, Darby, I should say, looks so old with those glasses. Brad, well, Brad's been around. I've been around for a little while. Now, Brad, once upon a time, in the days of being a boy toy, that was Brad. And I came to town, bit of a cad, and not a great moral base. My parents didn't have many. And then this young man showed up. And at 32 years old, this was my life. Now, he stayed around for 24 years. I would ask you to listen to his song. He came here to write music because I couldn't. I never learned how. Now, some of the music you'll see was not done right, but you have to understand the source, how it happened, another story. Ultimately, as Dali might say, tribute to Dali, time, it just really is so much different at this age. I'm 70, and how I see it, the fact that I can sit and meditate and breathe, prana breathe, control it, be patient, not squirm around like somebody's holding my butt down with a hook. Instead, when I was younger, to be able to establish the focus, to see the world at 70 from this view, I can't even begin to tell you how incredible it is. And so, as I go along, I've been drawing these pictures on for a couple of years now, and I try to do that while I'm doing my drawings. I'm also doing my writing. My best weeks have been about 350,000 words in a week. I need an editor. Know anybody? I need to go ahead and get some of this in print without having to give up the rights to go ahead and market it freely around the world. And thank goodness I don't live in Germany. Ich bin nicht eine Deutschlander. Ich bin Amerikaner. You can't take my money. You can't raid my bank accounts. You can't put me in prison for speaking out because I'm not a German citizen. But oh my goodness, my poor friends who are. And the Cattels. Oh my goodness, should we talk about the Cattels? The ones that wrote the authoritative version on the Biblica Helvetica Cattel. Or his son, who wrote during the time of the Nazis, which you're not allowed to talk about, but he said and defied Hitler. He spoke out and wrote and became the authority on the New Testament. Unfortunately, the one that was written by King James, it really was not an accurate depiction of what Yahweh, the leader of the Church of Nazarene, which was a Essenes-based organization that believed in the light coming from within, us being able to evolve and to come back, to be reincarnated. All these things were part of what Yahweh taught, and the Church of Nazarene taught until they wiped it out, along with the Gnostics, and eventually the Night of 500 Knives, and got rid of the Cathars. Not like as in Catholic, but the Cathars were actually much more Gnostic, and they wiped them out, down to the last castles, and then they took on the Celts, and they wiped out everybody, the Druids, that didn't agree. Burn them at the stake, said King James by then, or send them off as indentured servants. But a lot of people like that version. I think he was 12 when that came out. He was 10 when he wrote the Book of Demonology. You want to check those facts? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Now, it's important that we create these pure salvage outposts in my mind. These are outposts where we salvage the best of our past. The history, the manpower, the Tartarian era bells, if we can find them, all the information, even the Monopoly game, rare as it might be, with the banker running with his monocle. The one that's disappeared now. on all the games, but having relatively a photographic memory, I remember the banker, I remember the monocle. So how do I spot the guys on the other team? There's two teams out there, two computers running against each other. The hologram isn't just a one computer operation. So our team is working on one computer, and we see the Monopoly guy, and we see a whole bunch of other things. The Mandela effect is kind of taken out with the digital age. Digital thinkers are people that think based on what's fed into their system versus the analog system they already have, the memory system they've managed to maintain, and to keep as an analog thinking system versus a digital thinking system where you can, I'm going Michigander speeds. Thank you, sorry about that. So, slowing back down again. Pure salvage outposts, put together out of the best of the past. Houses for the future. Organizations. Places where people can have babies naturally through fertility without being modified through technology and other means of making babies that aren't really necessarily totally human. In a sense, they don't have the full capacities of imagination, sovereignty, and a belief in, through imagination, God. If you wipe out imagination, how can you imagine there could be anything greater than a human or the distractions that come with it? I don't think you can. Now, if people want to go ahead and do stuff, they want to start places like that, they want to go ahead and build, I want to support them. But there are logistics. How do you come get the materials? What's your plan? Do you have one? Where you can put them? They're going to rot outside. What is your plan? I've offered this up before. This is an old cartoon. Why? Because this is a way to go ahead and describe things. If you want to pause on that, you can read it all. Go to my past posts. Rubbles. Little blue racing cap, wireframe glasses, little planet on his back on a carpet. He came here as an avatar to help bring wibblery and wub to the world, to let you know, hey, you wipe out the nematodes, the worms, there ain't no way to irrigate. There ain't no way to get air down below. There's no way to support the ecosystem under the ground. Gotta have worms. So wibblery and wub is about having the worms and being able to go ahead and digest the past to form a future and make it good. Now, how do we do all this? How do we distribute it? All those kind of questions. That's what all these are supposed to be for. Because I can't seem to speak in a language that people can understand, so I try to put a picture is worth 1,000 words. These were just numbers I put out at one time so people kind of understand and estimate what the value. So they'll go out and do this. They'll go out and do what? Run past the dragon and leap that chasm at the fringe. Einstein was a copycat, but he did say some cool things, and one of them was that you don't find the people that are most creative and the most inventive. They're not out in the flocks being led by the shepherds to the slaughterhouse. No. They're not being led by the swindlers who buy their babies and sell them off. The swindlers who lie and cheat and steal along the way. The shepherds are not doing that for the benefit of the herds. They're selling on the sheep and doing what they need to get it back home, to be harvested for its wool, for its meat. Now, on the side of those black sheep at the edge of the chasm at the fringe, I am proud to be a black sheep at the chasm. Because with a good leap, if you're lean and you can make it, you realize at some point, I don't have to go to the slaughterhouse. I can leap across. I can reach the other side. I can reach a new plateau. I can be free of King James and the dragons that haunt us from our past. But it takes what? If you go across, what? We may be able to build a bridge. Because once somebody sees it can be done, others will follow. If you build it, they will come. Now, who are they? Well, that's a good question. Who are the other beings in the intercosmic web society? The other world unions of beings that have joined together. Lots of worlds from lots of different parts of the cosmos. Traveling through wormholes and all sorts of methods. What are those? I couldn't have told you that. at 15 years old, because when I was 15, all this was impossible. You couldn't go out and draw pictures and imagine things and create them. This is Darby's Canyon, which I plan to own again soon. I have given it up in a long battle against evil systems, swindlers, liars, and thieves. They do exist. But in a cartoon world, or fantasy, you can determine a lot of the future by visualizing it. Most of the people can't do that. Most of the people cannot get through this veil, channel this energy. Stones, crystals, the power of the mind, the heart, the instincts, the gut, born together. Just because they stretched out doesn't mean they're not intuitively connected. We know now we have neurons and we have synapses, same as the brain, in our gut, in our heart. And the power of our heart, oh my gosh, until I lost my son, I had no idea how much emotion could feed. Give me the power to draw these, color them, and oftentimes in just one day. I spent 3,400 hours in the cabs of machines. That's 8 years of 40-hour weeks. I did it in less than 3 years. So I would have the time then to write and to travel the world and to have a place here for other artists, an artist fortress. And from here, we can cast our ideas into Web3, where they are automatically going to be blockchained and protected. Now, anybody puts anything else out there, it can be cross-referenced to Web3. And guess what? I heard through the grapevine, they came up with a really cool name for these new blue light free monitors and a new network linked up to Web3. You know what they're going to call that, I hear? Me, M-I, and we, W-I. Now, it happens to be great that I've had me, W-I, me, M-I-I, and we, W-I-I, and I've been writing on this and doing this book for 50 years. What a coincidence that the new phones and the new network, they'll be free of being copied so that all of us artists can post our stuff. What do you think? Web3 will lead to all the beings on the planet, but not just our planet. All the beings that create things, including art houses that you can live in for life. They loophole around all the other rules, so that you can go ahead and have a tiny place, a portable building that doesn't get taxed like a house. Because why? It's a portable building. It's the turtle tribe. The Lakota said, when the turtle tribe and the snake tribe return, that is the time of transition. We are in that time. The turtle tribe are the people that move their home on their back. The snake tribe is the tribe that learns how to use the venom of the snake, the media, the internet, all that. Learns how to use that against the evil empire. Once upon a time, Darby drew a picture, and it showed how they would try to go ahead and isolate you and make you pay for the farts and all this stuff that was so made up in order to control people, to get them to isolate and be scared, to be willing to pay whatever it takes to stay alive. Sadly, very sadly, a lot of people are dying because of that. So, along the way, that I just did for a display, for a wedding. Just a wedding. And this is what I created. A school, Dragon's Lair. All this land as a refuge, as an embassy. What's it called? It's called the Embassy of wibblery and wub. There's lots of land already, water, but I don't want many humans. Just certain humans to come and stay here and others to come and learn, to be able to grow this, to be able to take this around and create outposts everywhere so that other people find that door of opportunity. Why? Because if you know you can make it and you get together as a group and you create a co-op, and the co-op is able to take things and to do things. I wrote a lot of things in the past. I've done premonitions. This isn't even colored in yet. Time goes by so fast. But in my premonitions I've made in the past, you'll find that some of them were actually quite true. I published them, and they all came relatively true. I didn't believe in prophecy when I was young, frankly. I thought, nah, that can't really happen. Actually, it can. I drew these pictures for a man one time, a black gentleman, some would say, that didn't know him. The story of a snake. He pretended to be a friend. I drew this for behind his bar. I was going to supply him all the materials to make all this, so you get people come out, their families, for picnics, so he said. But he also ran in that very place prostitution, gambling, drug dealing, gun running. God gave me a premonition after the man stabbed me in the back on a business deal, denied that I'd done anything for him, and he told me that the man would die by a gun, bullets. Indeed, his nephew took him out. There's another simple structure to look at doing, and ultimately, this gets down to, what do you have? What are your inventories? What is salvage about? More millionaires are made out of salvage than any other business. But who needs $1 million? You need houses for our children. We need communities. We need solutions. We're coming up to the end of the year. I'm going to have a massive liquidation sale. I'm going to begin 2026 trying to fuel many outposts where people who believe in having natural born children raised naturally without technology, stealing their brains and taking away their opportunity to learn how to think. Those first 7 years, natural, free of forced vaccinations, free of all sorts of things. Give them 7 years with good elders teaching the old ways, salvaging the best of the past and passing it forward, along with taking the best of the present. Once we see the damage, it's like letting your children do sugar and drugs and white flowers and all those things that were marketed for so many years through the TV when I was young. Why I was so sickly, why I was so bad, depressed because sugar takes out the magnesium out of your brain, takes the chromium out of your brain. And salts from the table salts are horrible for you. We know this now. Stop the madness. So I'm going to go ahead and have huge sales. You bring in the semi truck, you bring in, we can supply tools and show you how to do these outposts and train people and give you certified territories where people come to you knowing you're a community that doesn't believe in pedophiles, that does not believe in raping young girls, does not believe in human trafficking, does not believe in technology teaching children to be stupid, because they've proven that is what happens now, and they're stopping it. They're taking out technology out of the classrooms in foreign countries because they've shown dramatic drops in creativity, in intellectual absorption, in memory buffers for short-term and long-term memory. It's all being lost to computer technology, like I saw and foresaw when I had the first cyber cafe and saw what cyber sickness was. A woman vomiting violently over a toilet, 3 months pregnant, because she got that stupid helmet on her head, VR helmet, and it caused her to have problems after she took it off. Within 15 minutes, 20% of the people had serious problem. So I saw these things early. I want to stop it from taking over our children. I've been studying this for longer than most of you people watching this have been alive.